don't know if you've heard, but From Software games can be a little challenging at times, and Elden Ring, in all of its open world glory, doesn't exactly shy away from that either. There's a lot going on in this game, and as you prepare to venture forth into the lands between, you're going to need all the help that you can get. To that end, here we've put together a few beginner's tips and tricks to help ease your introduction into this beautiful yet brutal world. Ashes of War. Elden Ring offers in-depth weapons customization through a new system called Ashes of War. When equipped, these give special abilities to your weapon such as lightning, intelligence scaling, damage negation, and a ton of other skills. There are several Ashes of War that can be found through defeating bosses and world exploration, and using some additional items you can also duplicate them. Using Ashes of War can make a noticeable difference, and selecting the right one in the right situation can be critical. In one of my fights with the boss, using the right Ashes of War made it a cakewalk. Explore. I cannot stress enough, explore every nook and cranny. You never know what you'll come across. So much of the content in Elden Ring is hidden in dungeons and ruins, so if you're not exploring, you'll likely miss a crucial item or two. Heck, even some side quests and NPCs are hidden within these locations, so I'll say it again, explore. Attribute upgrades. Upgrading your attributes is, of course, one of the primary ways of powering up your character in Elden Ring, and while you're going to be making those decisions based on your own needs as you progress further into the game, in the opening hours, it's best to focus more on particular areas. Vigor and endurance, which govern your health and stamina respectively, are key stats that you're going to want to pump up early on. Armament upgrades. Of course, being able to deal higher damage with your attacks is just as important as it is to have higher health, if not more so depending on your playstyle. But rather than investing in attributes in those areas, it's better to upgrade your armaments, which is more effective in the long term than the short term. To that end, when you do upgrade your armaments, rather than going for even distribution across your weapons, it's better to focus on the one that acts as your main weapon. Jumping. Having a dedicated jump button is a small yet significant new addition to Elden Ring, and though it is, of course, a crucial tool in many ways, it's smart to remember that it's not something that's equally useful across activities. In combat, for instance, the jump action doesn't serve as a very good dodge. Dodge rolling is still the way to go because that gives you crucial iframes, which jumping doesn't, so keep that in mind. Stealth. Elden Ring borrows the stealth mechanics of Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, and you do well to lean on those as often as you can. It's an incredibly useful option to have in many circumstances, and clearing out enemies bit by bit with the use of stealth, rather than taking on large groups head-on at once, has obvious and immediate advantages. Stealth can also be cheesed quite easily, and yes, combining that with resetting enemies at sites of grace is a decent way of grinding runes. Hunting wildlife. Elden Ring's open world approach changes up the core structure of the game in significant ways. One of the smaller ones is having wildlife in the open world that you can hunt. Unlike most beings that you encounter in the game, the wildlife is not hostile and won't attack you, and the resources that they drop are often crucial for crafting, so every time you see a harmless little animal in your path, make sure to batter the hell out of it. Beacons and fragments. Speaking of the game's open world structure, Elden Ring's vast world can be a little tricky to navigate, purely because of how utterly free of hand-holding the game is at its core. You fill out the map and clear its fog of war by collecting map fragments, so you're going to want to make sure that you keep an eye out for those pickups, while using your beacons to make custom markers on the map is also the only way you have of marking points of interest. So it's best to make proper use of that tool as well, especially since the game doesn't have any sort of tracking system to help you keep track of, say, any merchants that you may have come across during your travels. Teardrop Scarabs. Often in the world of Elden Ring, you'll come across teardrop scarabs, and while catching them and killing them can be quite tricky at times, the rewards are also usually well worth the effort. From restoring your flasks to dropping weapon arts and incantations, among other things, the rewards that teardrop scarabs drop upon being killed are almost always very useful, so make sure to keep an eye out for them. Summons. Multiplayer trends to be a crucial part of From Software games. Like the Souls titles, Elden Ring does, of course, let you play completely offline if you want, though quite often it's advisable not to do so. As most people who've played Souls games will tell you, summoning other players to help out during boss fights can be incredibly useful more often than not, and it's better to remember that that's always a viable option. Of course, there's always the danger of getting invaded, so keep that in mind. Spirit Ashes. There are other forms of summons that can be quite useful in Elden Ring as well. Take the Spirit Ashes, for instance, which allow you to summon spirits to your aid during combat in certain areas of the world. These can be incredibly useful in tricky situations and encounters, especially if you're calling on elite spirits, so make use of this mechanic often. Also, remember that you can use items known as gloveworts to upgrade your spirit summons, which will obviously be integral if Spirit Ashes become an important part of the way that you play the game. Mounted Combat. Your Spectral Steed Torrent is one of Elden Ring's biggest additions, which makes sense given its open world nature and can be useful in more ways than one. For starters, you can blaze past enemies in higher level areas to quickly get to a site of grace and unlock a fast travel point. Meanwhile, there's also the mounted combat, which is especially effective against certain bosses and mini bosses out in the field itself. Super Armor. Alongside poise, super armor is another integral element that you'll have to keep in mind for Elden Ring's combat, seeing as it is what determines when an enemy gets staggered and becomes open to a critical hit. Like stamina, super armor gradually restores over time, so if you're looking to stagger an enemy, make sure you keep hitting them with attacks, even if it's with throwing knives from a distance. So what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below, and if you like the video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.